Did you know that your favorite packet of chips, the actual packet, is impossible to recycle? It's because it contains many different types of materials fused together, like different types of plastic, paper, aluminium. That's why it's called multi-layered plastic packaging, or MLP. It's also very inconsistent. So your chips packet is different from your chocolate wrapper, is different from your Tetra Pak, making it impossible to recycle. So much so that less than 1% of this waste is recycled globally. It's honestly the worst. And then that begs the question, why do we even produce MLP? Turns out that the multiple layers of the MLP protects your chips and keeps them fresh. It allows your chips packets to reach different parts of the world, preventing UV rays and moisture and oxidation of the food. It allows that poor kid in rural India to get those packets of chips. So MLP is the worst, but it's also useful. Nothing is binary. I came across this MLP problem while studying the waste management space, and I found that the waste space in India is very complex. It's not just an environmental issue, it's also a social and economic issue. For instance, there are close to 4 million waste pickers in India who live multidimensionally poor lives. These rag pickers, they work in waste, without PPE, and generally with their children. These are marginalized, these are minorities, migrant workers, generally from marginalized castes, who have a much lower life expectancy than you and I. They seldom know how to read and write. Honestly, it sucks. At the same time, 80% of the waste in India is untreated. That's so much economic value going to waste. And 95% of plastic packaging material value is lost annually. Plastic packaging material like our favorite packets of chips. The waste problem in India is complex. So before trying to solve it, I wanted to understand it better. I read it down and even volunteered to work with a nonprofit in Aurangabad. And I learned that there are a lot of organizations working on collection and segregation of waste. There are also a lot of organizations working on empowering waste pickers, and now like tech platforms are really hot, so people are connecting X to Y, but there's not enough solutions looking at the problem holistically from a social, environmental, and economic perspective. And even lesser solutions are focused on fundamentally increasing the value of waste through tech, because if you increase the value of waste, all of the incentives align. So that became our goal. How can we fundamentally increase the value of impossible to recycle plastic waste, such as MLP, and use that to empower waste pickers out of poverty? And that's what brought me to Pune. While I was researching where to start up, Pune seemed to make a lot of sense. There are a lot of educational institutions and research centers, and there's also a lot of, it's also not very expensive compared to some of the other bigger cities out there. And the best part is that we have one of the world's best and largest waste picker collective in Swachh Cooperative. So while I was choosing which part of India, which part of Maharashtra to start in, I actually got a chance to speak to the folks at Swachh. And I told them, look, this is what I'm trying to do. What do you think? They're like, Anish, we need this here. Why not start in Pune? I'm like, yeah, why not start in Pune? Look, my background is in finance and operations, which is fine and all, but if we wanted to fundamentally increase the value of waste, we needed the magic of chemistry, right? The unfair advantage that I and we had is that we could invest money into this problem. So the first thing I did was hire Dr. Jitendra Jitu Samdani. Jitu was finishing his PhD in electrochemistry from South Korea, and he's a Pune graduate. So he was yearning to come back to Pune so that he could be with his wife and his kids. So he was the perfect partner. Now, with MLP, we knew that the problem lay in the multiple layers stuck together. So we thought, how can we separate these layers and then convert them into more recyclable materials that are of higher quality? Now, this was in December 2020. Jitu was stuck in South Korea in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, but that didn't stop him from doing his first experiment. He went to a supermarket and miraculously found the infamous Indian magic masala packets of chips, and he did his first experiment. These are photos from the actual first experiment, and as you can see, that we were able to separate the layers right off the bat. So we got really excited. A month or so later, Jitu eventually came to Pune, and our first goal became to find lab space to be able to continue these experiments. We went to different educational institutions, we went to incubators, but it just didn't make sense because they were either too expensive or too bureaucratic, and we didn't really have the patience. So we decided to build our lab from scratch. On February 1st, 2021, we moved into a small 600 square foot space in Chinchwad, Pune, with 2 desks, 2 chairs, a stirrer, and a packet of chips. We then built on this early semi-successful experiment, focusing on economic viability and scalability of the process, while building our lab because we wanted to increase the rate of experimentation. So after a year of research and relocating to a different space because we had landlord troubles, and doing 946 experiments with an average time of 2.8 hours, we finally cracked it. So we developed a novel process that chemomechanically separates the layers of the plastic, extracts materials from it and building blocks. We then convert these building blocks into high-quality materials through either compounding or polymerization, and then we have the first material. So we were super psyched. This was the first material that we extracted out of MLP that is recycled, and the added bonus was that we got really good mechanical properties. Now, as we were getting close to this first material, we realized that we couldn't just sell material because manufacturers, they require buying materials in large quantities in tons. We have a small lab, so we couldn't produce tons of material, and we couldn't contract manufacture either because our process is novel. So we then made the painful decision to go up the value chain to product. We were like, so then the process of coming up with a product began. This was before ChatGPT, right? So we got a bunch of humans together and conducted brainstorming sessions where we shortlisted 400 different products, which we further shortlisted to 70 products. And then we used a complex matrix of 27 parameters to figure out which product made the most sense. These parameters included things like complexity. It couldn't be too simple, it couldn't be too complex. We also wanted our product to be something that would show off the mechanical properties of our material. And also a little bit of team excitement wouldn't be too bad. So in all of that, sunglasses scored really well. And then we were like, okay, we need to make sunglasses. And we started researching how sunglasses are made. And it turns out that this is also complex. Again, we couldn't contract manufacture sunglasses because these contract manufacturers were not comfortable putting material from kachra into their machines. And only for 500 pieces? No way, right? So we're like, okay. And also, we don't have much patience, clearly. You figured that out by now. So we decided to make sunglasses ourselves. We designed them in-house. We even designed the molds in-house. And we experimented with 3D printed molds because we wanted to keep control of the process, keep it in-house, and move fast. But 3D printed molds did not work. But they served as a blueprint for us to develop more conventional molds made from stainless steel. Because now we were only making the insert. So it dramatically reduced our cost of manufacturing and the time of manufacturing. And then we had to figure out a bunch of other things as well, like grooving, hinging, assembly, post-processing. Anyway, after a year or so, in February 2023, we finally launched the world's first recycled sunglasses made from impossible to recycle packets of chips right here in Pune. And we launched... Thank you. And we launched this in beta mode because they were far from perfect, right? But they were good enough to throw out there to get some feedback. And we were surprised by the response that we got. We sold out the first batch within 6 days. Our video went a little viral, and we were covered by hundreds of news publications across India and the world. But we're not just making sunglasses. Sunglasses will not solve the waste problem and the waste picker issue in India. But it's a strong proof of concept that you can take impossible to recycle plastic waste, convert it into high quality, more recyclable materials and products, while empowering waste pickers into better livelihoods. And this last part is critical. In India, you cannot solve the waste problem without incorporating the informal sector into the equation. We build our process in such a way that 50 to 75% of it can be done by former waste pickers, who we formalize into our supply chain, upskilling them, giving them dignified labor. Their incomes increase by an average of 2x. They get health insurance. But the most important part is the security and the dignity of good work. And we do this in partnership with Swatch. How cool is that? Pranjali is a child of a waste picker couple who works with us. Both her parents passed away when she was young. She has a younger sister who is physically challenged and a younger brother who is up to no good. So when she came to work with us, she was 20 years old. I'm like, Pranjali, shouldn't you be in college? She's like, somebody in the house needs to earn. Today, Pranjali helps with pad printing and post-processing of sunglasses in our lab. She also helped design this haute couture dress that ended up on India's biggest fashion week. And the other day, Pranjali just got married recently, and her new husband, after a month or so after her marriage, told her, Pranjali, stop working. You don't need to work. Pranjali looked him dead in the eye and said, I will never leave this job. Next to Pranjali, on the other side of the mannequin, is Seema. Seema is the sole breadwinner in her house of 3. She has 2 kids and a sick husband who has had 3 liver surgeries and does not keep very well. Her mother-in-law was a waste picker, and she used to work as a housekeeper before this. In our lab, the optimism and the energy that Seema brings to the equation doesn't make any sense. It's unexplainable. And we learned out of the blue that she can weave. So this haute couture dress that you're seeing is weaved by Seema. She actually taught Pranjali how to weave. We gave her some direction, but she led the way. And this same dress ended up on a supermodel in India's fashion week. So this dress ended up on a supermodel on the ramp at India's biggest fashion week last month. How insane is that? Sometimes impossible just seems like an illusion waiting to be unraveled. Look, we are just getting started. We have a long way to go, a lot to figure out. And it's especially hard, right? It's especially hard for us because besides our morality, nothing incentivizes us to incorporate waste pickers and empower them. Because capitalism only focuses on maximization of profit and nothing else. But we're not doing this to make money. We're doing this to solve hard social and environmental problems. And you know what? Profit generation is not the same as profit maximization. So how do you generate profit to maximize impact? We generate profit to maximize our impact. And the more revenue we make, the more profit we make, the more impact we have, the more waste we recycle, the more waste pickers we empower in this virtuous cycle that is exciting. And at the same time, we're not some NGO relying on donations. We are an impact-first startup trying to build economically viable solutions to hard problems. And just because we're impact-first doesn't mean we can't be cutting edge in the way we do our work, in the technology we develop. In fact, we need to be cutting edge to solve the complex problem that is waste in India so we can expand margins enough to be able to sustain and scale the impact we want to create. So at the heart of it all, capitalism is what we're trying to evolve. So while capitalism has done wonders for us to get us to where we are, we need to bend the arc of capitalism to be more than something that is just about money, something that takes the planet and the people in it into consideration. And that is really hard. Some would say that is impossible. Despite some early success, there's no guarantee what we're going to do is going to work or is going to scale. In fact, the odds are against us. And yes, we took these impossible to recycle plastic packets of chips and we made them into sunglasses, and that was pretty difficult. But evolving capitalism, that's much harder. But that doesn't mean we're not going to try. Because we've learned that sometimes impossible can be an illusion. And then when you take an impossible thing and you break it down into a bunch of small possible things, then you might believe in magic again. Thank you.